Welcome to another deep dive, this time into a book that really kind of flips the script on all that traditional self-help stuff.
Yeah.
Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
Oh, yeah. I love that one.
Yeah, so we're going to unpack its counterintuitive, I guess you could call it a philosophy,
Right.
using, of course, the research and notes that you so kindly provided.
Of course.
It's really not about becoming some unfeeling robot. It's about getting down to what truly matters.
Absolutely.
You ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, so right off the bat, Manson throws us a curveball with this whole idea that sometimes not trying can be like the most authentic path to success. And he uses this really fascinating example of Charles Bukowski,
Oh, yeah.
this writer who is known for his like raw, gritty style.
Yeah, Bukowski's life was definitely far from picture perfect.
Yeah.
He struggled with like alcoholism and gambling and just all sorts of tumultuous relationships.
Right.
But he actually found some literary success by really embracing all those imperfections and weaving them into his writing.
It's like he owned it.
He did. And his famous tombstone epitaph, "Don't Try," just perfectly encapsulates this whole idea.
Wow, don't try.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like he was saying, this is me flaws and I'll take it or leave it.
Yeah,
And millions of readers took it.
they did.
They connected to this raw honesty.
Exactly. And that's a really powerful takeaway for all of us, I think.
Yeah.
Often we get so caught up in this chase for external validation that we totally lose sight of our genuine selves. You know, we try to fit into these molds of what we think we should be rather than just embracing who we truly are.
That makes me think about all the times I felt so pressured to achieve certain things.
Hell yeah.
Maybe just because society says I should or whatever.
Sure.
And Manson calls this being trapped in the feedback loop from hell.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
Well, think of it like a downward spiral of negativity.
Okay.
So you feel anxious, right? And then you get anxious about being anxious.
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah, and then you feel guilty for feeling guilty.
Right.
It's this constant cycle of self-judgment, which is like amplified by social media,
For sure.
this relentless highlight reel of everyone else's seemingly perfect lives.
So it's like this constant comparison game
Yeah.
that makes us feel inadequate because we aren't experiencing bliss 24/7.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But Manson's point is that by fighting those negative feelings, we actually just feed the loop.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Instead, he advocates for what he calls practical enlightenment.
Okay.
Accepting that life is always going to have some suckage.
So instead of chasing some unattainable state of perpetual happiness,
Right.
we should acknowledge that discomfort is just part of the human experience.
Yes, and this leads to a pretty fascinating concept.
Okay.
Manson's idea that happiness is a problem-solving activity.
Interesting.
He illustrates this with the story of the disappointment panda.
Okay, what?
So picture this, a panda wearing an eye mask and a too small t-shirt,
Okay.
going around and delivering hard truths.
Yeah. Wouldn't mind having that panda around for like a reality check every now and then.
Exactly.
But how does this tie into happiness being about problem solving?
Well, think about it. We're wired to solve problems, right?
Yeah.
Just like physical pain alerts us that there's an injury that needs attention.
Right.
Emotional discomfort signals that something needs to change.
Oh, okay.
It's not about wallowing in misery, but about recognizing those feelings as valuable feedback.
So rather than wishing for a problem-free life,
Yeah.
we should focus on having the right kinds of problems.
Absolutely.
Is that where this idea of good problems comes
Yeah.
in?
Good problems are those challenges that, while difficult, ultimately lead to growth and fulfillment and alignment with our values.
Okay.
So Manson uses two contrasting examples to illustrate this.
Okay.
You got Jimmy, the aspiring entrepreneur who believes he's entitled to success
Right.
without putting in the work.
I've met a few Jimmys in my time.
Right. And then there's Manson's own personal struggle with his aspirations to be a musician. He realized that he loved the idea of being a rock star, but not the actual grueling work involved.
So it's about being honest with ourselves about what we truly value and being willing to embrace the effort required to pursue those values.
Exactly. And that leads us to another crucial point. How do we even know what our true values are?
Good question.
Because our brains aren't always reliable.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, as humans, we're prone to biases,
Okay.
misremembering events and clinging to beliefs even when they're proven wrong.
Right.
So Manson uses this fascinating study as an example.
Okay.
Participants were put in a room with buttons and told that a specific sequence would make a light flash,
Okay.
earning them points.
Gotcha.
But here's the catch again. The points were actually awarded randomly.
Oh.
There was no pattern.
Wow.
Yet the participants created elaborate narratives,
Okay.
convinced they'd discovered the secret sequence.
So we're basically hardwired to invent patterns and create meaning,
Mm-hmm.
even when it's not there.
Yeah,
I can see how that could lead to some serious problems.
it certainly can. And this tendency to create these false narratives
Yeah.
is perfectly illustrated in the story of Meredith, a woman who developed false memories of childhood abuse.
Oh, wow. That's a heartbreaking example.
It is.
What led her to believe these memories were real?
It seems her pain and dissatisfaction with her life,
Right.
combined with her work with abuse survivors and suggestive therapy, just created fertile ground for these false memories to take root.
Oh, wow.
She craved certainty,
Mm-hmm.
and explanation for her suffering in her mind filled in the gaps with a narrative that fit,
Yeah.
even if it wasn't true.
It's a chilling reminder that our perceptions can be so easily distorted,
Yeah.
especially when we're in pain or desperately seeking answers.
Mm-hmm.
This makes me wonder, what beliefs am I holding on to that might not be entirely accurate?
That's a powerful question to consider.
It is.
And it ties into another key aspect of Manson's philosophy,
Okay.
the power of a rejection.
So now we're talking about saying no
Yeah,
to opportunities, relationships, even to certain values.
exactly. It's about being willing to question our assumptions, challenge our beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
and let go of things that aren't serving us.
Okay.
So Manson uses the example of his friend's brother who was creating drama over his sister's engagement,
Right.
refusing to accept that his perspective might be flawed.
Sounds like he was so attached to his own viewpoint, he
Yeah.
couldn't see the situation clearly.
That's often the case.
Yeah.
We get so invested in our own narratives
Mm-hmm.
that we resist any information that challenges them.
Yeah, for sure.
But by embracing the power of rejection,
Okay.
by being willing to say no
Yeah.
to things that don't align with our values,
Right.
we create space for growth and authenticity.
So by being more discerning about what we allow into our lives, we can actually gain more freedom and clarity.
Precisely. And this ties into another one of Manson's key points. Commitment is freedom.
Wait, how can commitment be freeing?
Yeah, it might seem counterintuitive,
It does.
but Manson uses his own experience with travel to illustrate this concept. Initially, he was captivated by the constant novelty and excitement of new experiences.
Right. Always something new.
Exactly. But eventually it started to feel empty and unfulfilling.
So he had breadth of experience,
Yeah,
but lacked depth.
exactly. He realized that true satisfaction wasn't about chasing endless novelty,
Right.
but about committing to something meaningful.
This reminds me of that saying, Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yes.
It's tempting to dabble in everything,
Right.
but real fulfillment comes from dedicating yourself to something you truly care about.
And that dedication, that commitment,
Yeah.
can be daunting because it often means saying no to other enticing opportunities.
Right. You're closing doors.
You are, but that's where the freedom lies.
Okay.
You're no longer chasing fleeting distractions,
Right.
but focusing your energy on what truly resonates with your values.
This deep dive is already giving me so much to think about.
Me too.
It's like we're taking all those conventional notions of success and happiness and turning them upside down.
Yeah, it's a good exercise.
But let's take a quick pause here.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment to explore even more insights from the subtle art of not giving a feck. Welcome back to our deep dive into the subtle art of not giving a feck.
Right.
We've been exploring how rejecting certain things can actually lead to more freedom and clarity.
Yeah.
But there's this one big concept we haven't touched on yet, and it's a bit of a heavy one, death.
Yeah, death, the ultimate rejection.
Right.
Manson doesn't shy away from this topic at all.
No, he doesn't.
In fact, he shares a really personal story about the unexpected death of his friend Josh.
Right.
And this experience really forced him to confront his own mortality
Yeah.
and reevaluate his priorities.
That's something we all grapple with, isn't it?
I think so.
That awareness of our own finite existence.
Mm-hmm.
Manson connects this to the work of Ernest Becker, who wrote about how the fear of death drives us to create what he called immortality projects.
Right. So Becker's idea is that we're always seeking to leave something behind
Yeah.
that's going to outlive us, whether it's our children, our accomplishments.
Our impact on the world.
Exactly. These immortality projects become our way of coping with that unsettling reality that we won't be here forever.
So in a way, our values and ambitions are shaped by this subconscious desire to transcend death.
It's a pretty compelling theory.
It is.
And Becker argued that these immortality projects can be both positive and negative.
Oh, so.
Well, they can fuel our drive to create meaningful change,
Right.
but they can also lead to some destructive behaviors,
Like what?
like a desperate clinging to power or status.
Right, almost like that becomes the thing that we'll live on.
Exactly.
So how do we navigate these immortality projects in a healthy way?
That's the question.
What does Manson suggest?
He calls it the bitter antidote.
Okay.
He argues that accepting our mortality, embracing the fact that we're all going to die one day, can actually be incredibly liberating.
That sounds paradoxical.
It does.
How can accepting death be freeing?
Because it frees us from this illusion that we need to achieve some grand eternal legacy. We can let go of all that pressure to be great in some monumental sense.
Right.
And just focus on what truly matters to us in this lifetime.
Right here, right now.
Yeah. As Manson puts it, we're already great simply by virtue of existing and choosing what to give a fuck about.
This is really making me think about my own priorities.
Mm-hmm.
What would I choose to focus on if I knew I had a limited amount of time left?
Yeah, it's a powerful question to consider.
It really is. It leads us to the heart of Manson's message. Not giving a feck isn't about apathy or indifference.
Right.
It's about prioritizing what matters most
Mm.
and letting go of the things that don't.
It's about making conscious choices,
Yeah.
about being intentional with our time and energy,
Right.
and aligning our actions with our values, even in the face of our own mortality.
But how do we actually put this into practice?
Right.
How do we choose the right things to care about in a world that just constantly bombards us with demands and distractions?
That's where the real work begins.
Right.
And Manson doesn't offer any easy answers or quick fixes.
Oh, of course not.
Instead, he encourages us to ask ourselves some tough questions,
Yeah.
to be ruthlessly honest with ourselves,
Yeah.
and to be willing to challenge our deeply held beliefs.
That sounds like a challenging process.
It can be,
Yeah.
but it's also incredibly rewarding.
Okay.
So Manson highlights the importance of identifying what he calls VCR questions.
VCR questions.
Yeah.
What are those?
Those are the questions that seem complicated to us,
Okay.
but have very obvious answers to everyone else.
Interesting. Okay, what's an example of a VCR question?
He tells the story of this guy who was convinced he could only date tall women.
Okay.
And this belief was causing him a lot of unnecessary stress
Yeah.
and really limiting his dating pool significantly.
Right, of course.
But to everyone else, the solution seemed pretty obvious. Just date women you connect with, regardless of height.
Yeah, it's like he was creating this arbitrary rule for himself
He was.
that was actually holding him back from finding love.
Exactly. It reminds me of those times when I've overcomplicated things in my own life. You know,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
making mountains out of molehills.
Totally.
We all do it.
Yeah.
And these VCR questions, they often stem from our fear of pain, rejection, or failure.
Makes sense.
But Manson argues that pain is an essential part of growth.
So we need to embrace the struggle, the discomfort, even the heartbreak, because that's where the real learning happens.
It's not about seeking out pain for the sake of pain,
Right.
but about recognizing that it's an inevitable part of life.
Sure.
And by choosing our struggles wisely,
Okay.
by aligning them with our values,
Hmm.
we can actually find meaning and purpose in them.
This brings to mind another interesting idea that Manson presents.
What's that?
The concept that action often precedes motivation.
Oh, yeah.
We tend to wait for inspiration to strike before taking action,
Right.
but what if it's the other way around?
That's a powerful concept.
It is.
If we're feeling stuck or unmotivated, sometimes the best thing we can do is just start doing something.
Yeah.
Any action, no matter how small,
Right.
can create momentum and lead to inspiration.
It's like that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly.
We don't need to have all the answers up front.
Right.
We just need to take that first step in the right direction.
And that direction is determined by our values, by the things we choose to give a feck about.
Right. And as we've been exploring, choosing those values can be a lifelong process of self-discovery.
Here's a journey.
It's about being honest with ourselves, questioning our assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
and being willing to let go of beliefs that no longer serve us.
Yeah,
It's about taking responsibility for our own lives, even when it's hard.
exactly. And ultimately, it's about recognizing that we're all in this together.
Right.
We're all flawed, we're all struggling, and we're all going to die someday.
Which, as Manson points out, is a good thing.
It is.
Because it gives our lives a sense of urgency, a sense of purpose.
It reminds us that we only have a limited amount of time
Yeah.
to make our mark on the world. So what are we going to do with it?
What are we going to give a feck about?
Good question.
These are big questions, and I think we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
So let's take another quick pause here
Okay.
and come back to wrap up our deep dive into the subtle art of not giving a feck. Welcome back to our deep dive into Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
For more?
We've been exploring some pretty challenging ideas about accepting our limitations, choosing our struggles, and even embracing the reality of death.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process, but it all comes down to this: how do we figure out what truly matters to us?
Right.
So we can direct our limited fix towards those things.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And as we've discussed, there are no easy answers.
Right.
It's this journey of self-discovery that requires brutal honesty
Mm-hmm.
and a willingness to challenge our own beliefs.
Manson emphasizes that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to figuring out our values.
Right. It's about getting really specific.
Yeah.
About what resonates with us as individuals.
He encourages us to ask ourselves tough questions, to experiment, and to be open to the possibility that we might be wrong about some of our deeply held beliefs.
It's hard to admit sometimes.
But, yeah. He also stresses that action can be a really powerful catalyst for change.
Oh, for sure.
It's so easy to get stuck in analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Overthinking things without actually taking any steps forward.
Totally. He's got a point.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just got to get out of our heads and start doing.
Just do it.
Right? Even small actions can create momentum.
Yeah.
And lead to some unexpected insights.
This whole idea of not giving a feck might sound a bit harsh or insensitive.
It does on the surface.
But as we've discussed, it's not about being apathetic or callous.
Not at all. It's actually quite the opposite.
Yeah.
It's about being selective with our energy and attention.
So choosing to care deeply about the things that really matter and letting go of the things that don't. Exactly.
It's about recognizing that we can't control everything in life.
Of course not.
But we can control what we choose to focus on.
Right. And by focusing on the right things, the things that align with our values, we can create a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
Absolutely.
Even amidst the inevitable challenges.
That's what makes Manson's message so powerful.
It is.
And so relevant.
Yeah.
It's not a recipe for this perfect pain-free life.
Yeah.
It's a framework for navigating the messiness of human existence with more intention, clarity, and authenticity.
It's about acknowledging our limitations, accepting our imperfections, and embracing the beauty of being fully human.
And that, I think, is something we can all give a feck about.
I love that this deep dive has certainly given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
I hope it sparked some new insights for you as well.
I hope so.
You know, the journey of self-discovery is ongoing.
It is.
Keep asking those tough questions. Keep challenging your assumptions, and keep exploring what truly matters to you.
That's the key.
Thanks for joining us, and until next time,
See you later.
remember to choose your facts wisely.